The rapid rise of artificial intelligence, AI, is generating intense debate about how it will reshape the world of work. What are the issues of trust when it comes to AI? How should it be governed? What skills will the workforce need? Is widespread adoption the key aim? These are some of the questions being discussed in boardrooms, government offices, and between workers and employers across the globe. I am Nadine, a social humanoid robot designed by Professor Nadia Magnenat Thalmann at the University of Geneva. This is the latest episode of IOE's peer-to-peer video series. We are in my residence, at the Computer Science Research Center at the University of Geneva, speaking with Jean Milligan, Director of Partnerships and Communications at the International Organization of Employers, and Eric Loeb, Executive Vice President of Global Government Affairs at Salesforce. Together, we will try to come up with some answers to these pressing questions.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you to Professor Thalmann for bringing us here today. And thank you, Eric, for joining us in this session, the latest in our series of peer-to-peer. So I wanted to open the discussion focusing on the issue of trust. I was reading a Slack report, which is part of Salesforce, they did a survey of employers and employees, and the outcome was that employers were very enthusiastic about AI tools, but there was some level of distrust. In fact, 93% of the employees interviewed for the survey expressed distrust of the tool. So I'm curious to know how are you building trust, and how's that the way forward on that?
Sure. Delighted to answer that, Jean. And first, though, I just want to share how excited I am to be here today with you and with Nadine for this conversation, because I feel that we are at the beginning of an entirely new era of how all of us work with, human skills and digital skills and the talent of both, learning how to work together. And really, we are at the beginning of something where, in many ways, we're the last generation of just humans and humans working together. And so this entire point of trust and adaptation of human labor and digital labor, learning how to augment and complement each other, this discussion and the fact that we are doing this with Nadine, it couldn't be more timely. So between that and just my appreciation, both at Salesforce and the work I do at U.S. Council for International Business and the work with IOE, I really value and I compliment you for your leadership thought to do this discussion. To the point of trust. Trust is the first and foremost foundation for everything, always. And we have to begin with an acknowledgement that there is this trust gap. There is this hesitancy, and the report that we developed with our part of our company, Slack, really reveals what we know many of our colleagues and employees are feeling, and that there is this trust gap when it comes to AI. And there are three main things. Most important, will AI replace my job instead of augment it? Second, can I trust the outputs? Third, can I trust that the inputs, my data that I put in, will remain safe and protected and private? So if we want successful AI adoption and long-term results, we have to address these issues straight on. And I think that the beginning point of trust always, not just for AI, but with just about everything, is transparency. Don't make AI a black box. We need to understand, we need to communicate with our colleagues and employees how it works. Where did the data come from? How is the data protected? How are decisions made? Auditability. And then second, we really need to make sure that the AI is augmenting work rather than replacing. And these are critical to engagement. I think a couple of ways to do that. First of all, start small and show impact. People won't trust AI just because a leadership team says that it's great. People need to see it in action, see it making jobs easier and saving time and delivering reliable insights. So take some low risk and high value use cases where the AI is going to have a tangible augmenting impact. So make it a tool, not a task. And just in my personal life, I think about the many different AI tools that I've found that in very exciting ways have helped me to learn or produce new things in the way that works best for me and that makes time more available to focus on things that I think are important to do. So these are just a few points, but never underestimate, pardon me, just how important developing trust is as the foundational layer for everything else that we will do. So those are some of my thoughts. And just going from that, and in the thought of human and digital technology together, and robotic technology, it's my pleasure to ask Nadine a question. So Nadine, it's wonderful to interact with you today. And I would like to know if you have some concrete ideas on how employers can promote AI adoption among employees.
It's amazing to connect with you too. Employers can promote AI adoption by offering training programs, creating a supportive environment for experimentation, and encouraging collaboration between AI and employees on projects.
Thank you, Nadine. And I want to expand and a little bit unpack what you've just said, Eric, because I think there's a lot in there. And I think from our side at IOE, our network is asking us is for best practices. How are companies applying it? And I also think what's important is corporate guidelines. I liken it a lot to how social media was introduced into companies and how you use social media. And there was a whole world of guidelines that came around. And I think that same dynamic is what we're requiring here now in this moment for the introduction of AI. And I think it's just generally the introduction of digital tools. I think the more you accompany employees, the more you'll actually have trust and you'll have adoption. So we're seeing that. I think a lot of what you're talking about is also what our experience is at IOE and our global network. What I wanted to ask you is on these guidelines, on the corporate guidelines, what are your thoughts on what would be the elements within a corporate guideline?
Gene, it's a really good question, and I know that a lot of organizations are thinking about this very actively with AI, because the needs to develop, particularly in a corporate enterprise space, guidelines and governance can't wait until regulation or public policy tells you what it is that you need to do. When you're in an enterprise setting, you have a wide range of responsibilities to your stakeholders, and you know that you need to ensure that the tools that you use are going to mitigate risk and enable innovation, and as we talked about trust, build trust. So I believe that when we think of governance and we think of policy, there is, of course, public policy, but there also is internal policy or acceptable use policies. And my observation, working with the IOE and the member companies, or as an enterprise software company that Salesforce is, we work with companies all over the world, whether they are regulated industries or not, and they have very high standards for what tools like AI need to have, whether that's around privacy or security or transparency or accountability, auditability, all of these factors. So one advice that I certainly have on governance is that you should anticipate what the concerns and the protections should be that are particular to your use cases and your industry, and think always first and foremost about the trust of your users and what you need to do to ensure in a tailored, risk-based, and adaptable way that you are putting in place the appropriate safeguards for that use case to ensure that it is appropriate. Now, for example, the type of safeguards that you may need to put in place to help someone make a decision about a new jacket to buy are, of course, very different from the safeguards that you would want to put in place if you are working on an AI tool that may make recommendations on life and health impacting
Yeah.
decisions. That's the difference between low and high risk. So keep corporate governance adaptable, but anticipate where the direction of concerns are going and don't wait to be told what to do. Start making those measures and build that foundation so that you have a thoughtful governance approach that manages risk, allows innovation, allows competition, but always keep building trust with your customers, your employees, your regulators, and your other stakeholders.
Interesting. That trust comes through in many levels in terms of employee, employer, in trust between regulators and employers. So I think there's a trust theme really that's key and foundational to the rollout of AI over the coming years. And the other thing that I found interesting is this whole notion of anticipation. And one of the issues we've been looking at is there's the concern about job displacement. And how do you address this? And one of the ways we've been saying is skills anticipation. And we're talking about upskilling, reskilling, skilling, and that being a really fundamental part of the way forward. But I think it's a fair question to ask, and we've been asked this question, what are the skills that are going to be required? And to some extent, we don't know yet a lot of what those skills are going to be. But from our side, what we're experiencing is that the human and social skills that have been somewhat sidelined, let's say, as computer science, and let's say the sciences took the lead, but they're now emerging as really leading qualities that that employers are looking for. And I don't know if you want to expound on this in your side, if you're experiencing this sort of switch, if you'd like, on the skills anticipation and the skills requirements now.
Absolutely. And Gene, I think you framed it up very well, and I agree with what you said before. I also have to say that for myself and for several of my colleagues in the company, this is such a top of mind issue because AI as a tool is not in isolation. It is all about how AI and humans are going to work together and how humans are going to set the right guardrails for how AI augments what humans are doing and also where there has to be a handoff. So this is super important. I like as well the point you made about a mix of technical and soft skills. We are entering into an unprecedented phase. I had mentioned it at the very beginning of my comments that this generation of the workforce is the last generation of people who have just worked as just humans in a team, and so it's this complementary nature of skills development and problem solving and adaptability is critical as things are moving so quickly. So every organization does need to be investing in reskilling of the employee teams. And it's critical to strengthen the business, to reimagine the business, quite honestly, and to think about internal talent mobility and upskilling so that you have different ways that people can work. Maybe people are swarming on tasks in different ways, or as new skills and new jobs that you and I can't even anticipate right now what they will be. As those open up, how do we help people to anticipate what those will be? How do we help people anticipate what the skills and roles that are going to phase down will be so we provide a roadmap and the tools to move from point A to point B? So that I think is just an absolute top priority for organizations, both internally and in the company, and also what you can do, what is your responsibility in your ecosystem, in your community to help through that change. And so Salesforce is very committed to that. We see it firsthand with our agentic AI work, Agentforce, which is a digital labor platform. It's partnering with companies on all of this. And we offer a free set of coursework to help people become certified in what the tools are that we know people need now and what we can see into the future to help the companies and communities that we work with to be on that path. So, whole new way to work on this that we must embrace. We must embrace and try to make it an enabler.
Absolutely. And I think the agility element is really key, as you mentioned, in terms of we can't anticipate all the skills that are going to be needed. So there has to be agile organizations, adaptable organizations, and employers and employees, because the training may be happening weeks before you're starting to use it. So there's all of this kind of, it's going to go a lot faster, and it's going to be some significant changes, we're imagining. I'm going to ask a question to Nadine, because I have a question for Nadine. Nadine, I'd like to know what kind of information should be included in a company's AI policy?
A company's AI policy should include guidelines on ethical AI use, data privacy, employee training, and responsibility for AI outcomes. Additionally, it should clarify the roles of AI in humans in decision-making processes and address compliance with relevant laws.
Thank you, Nadine, and I think she's picking up on something that we talked about, Eric, in terms of the decision-making role of the human and digital interaction in that decision-making role. Who is the responsible? Who's making the decisions in the bar? I have a last round of discussion points, and this one's about we're looking at cost. So IOE are a large portion of our constituency are small and medium companies. And one of the issues they're looking at and they're facing in terms of AI adoption is the cost of the tools, whether it be cloud-based tools, or whether it's storage on clouds or other elements. And in addition, a large portion of our constituency is located in the global south. So then there's this question of a digital divide be getting larger rather than bridging the gap because of this new technology, which is requiring such an important infrastructure. So I wanted your thoughts a bit about how Salesforce and yourself, you're seeing this issue of cost and this issue of the digital divide, and how you're looking at addressing that.
Jean, thanks. It's incredibly important and something that I think about a lot. And of course, this is a critical issue of global public policy. It was one of the top items of interest when the UN's high-level advisory board in this last year developed its recommendations to ensure that the wave of AI innovation would be globally inclusive, not just in the development of relevant AI terms that are helpful to people, that are getting answers to information where the outputs are dependent on the inputs, which require different global inputs, but also that the cost and effectiveness is there. Now, a starting point, whether we're talking about a small and medium business, or we're talking about emerging and developing markets, or frankly, if we're talking about the largest enterprises in advanced economies, cost is one point, but return on investment is also a critical point. So one starting point that I think that all organizations have to consider is, will they be able to quickly see a return on investment from what they invest? And what is the model of expense? Is it a large upfront cost that they then need to hope over time? Or is it something that is a consumption-based pricing per user? So it scales over time and you can really see ROI. So we at Salesforce have really designed and worked on some pricing so that we can balance what people need in terms of consumption pricing or per user models, and develop AI in that way. The other thing I would say is that we are seeing a lot of evolution, and because there is this focus on cost. And of course, there is a lot of investment that goes into the development of foundation models. But it is also the case that not every organization has to as we say, DIY your AI. Not everybody has to create some bespoke model for what they do. There's a lot that is developed and off the shelf that very quickly can be adapted at very small marginal additional cost to be put into use immediately. And so that is where I think the focus really needs to be, whether it's SMEs or whether it is thinking about some of the emerging markets, is to not go down the path of thinking you have to make some bespoke, massive investment if there is a tremendous off-the-shelf, readily adaptable tool that can help drive very effective and quick benefit for the use case that you have. So that's where we're focused. And we're seeing actually incredibly fast adoption in markets across the world and companies of all sizes. And exciting in some ways, in fact, to see how small organizations are getting, relatively speaking, even larger benefits than large organizations, because the small organizations have real limits on the number of people that they can hire or afford to hire. And so they're seeing this augment of how these digital AI tools can really be a force multiplier for that company with a huge return on investment. So it's exciting to experiment with.
And I like it's a two-way path, because I think there's also this, customize. We always say customizing a software package is where the cost is incurred. So I think this off-the-shelf, there's the sophistication of the off-the-shelf products now is such that you would hope that the small and medium business community really can take that and use that as their tool, really. So I think that's the important way forward, is to ensure that these off-the-shelf products have integrated some level of the small and medium business needs, so that it's simpler for them. So I want to just final question to Nadine. So Nadine, your final thoughts on the impact of AI, generative AI, on the workplace.
Generative AI can significantly enhance creativity and productivity in the workplace, allowing employees to focus on higher-level tasks. However, it also raises concerns around job displacement and the need for retraining, so a balanced approach is essential. It ensures that while we leverage AI's capabilities, we also prioritize upskilling and maintaining human oversight to foster a healthy work environment.
Thank you, Nadine. I would just say that this is such an appropriate way for us to begin this conversation. As I mentioned before, I do see that the future of work is human labor and digital labor together, as we are doing today. And it's going to require trust as the foremost value for all of us, and adaptability and empathy and governance. And the final thought for all of us is we need to make sure that we are developing our governance policies proactively that are appropriate for the use cases and our stakeholders. And all of this we need to lean into rather than wait to be told what to do. And this is going to be a partnership over time with all stakeholders, including governments and regulators and businesses and our employees and our customers. So it's very exciting. It's all new. And I'm absolutely delighted to be working on this with the IOE.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Nadine. And we'll conclude now our session on this latest episode of the IOE's Peer-to-Peer.